One time, we successfully mated a bulldog with a Shih Tzu.
Really? That's weird.
Yeah, we called it a bullshit.
Okay, is this guy just making it up as he goes? Yep. Is it all BS? Yep. Here's Big Nate with some more BS, because it's BSing with Big Nate.
Welcome into another edition of BS with Big Nate. We're having a little fun. We're doing a little bit of a sidestep this weekend because I felt like it was a good weekend to have a horror theme because we haven't done anything like this in a while. So I am joined by one of my very dear friends, Mindy of Dying Oath. Mindy, thank you for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me. I thought this would be a lot of fun.
I thought it would too, particularly when I saw the video, your guys' most recent single release, End of Days, which is just, from what I see, it's getting a lot of support on the internet and it's getting a lot of positive feedback, both the video and the track. The video, man, it really stuck out to me. And if you haven't watched it yet, slide on over to Dying Oath's YouTube channel or Facebook. I think it's on their Facebook.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Give it some love. Give it a watch. It's like 7 minutes. 7:40.
Yeah, with the credits.
It's well worth the watch. You always got to watch the credits. Actually, we'll stop here for a second. When you watch a movie, do you watch the credits?
Sometimes I do, because sometimes there's like hidden golden eggs in there,
I'm a sucker for the credits. I like to read the names. And then I feel like superhero movies have us so conditioned now to where everyone's watching the credits because there's that scene at the end. And I really think that was just some sort of union move, which is fine because the credits are there to be appreciated. But End of Days, you need to check it out. It's a really compelling story. It matches the song really well. It was really well done. I know you kind of have a personal tie to the venue it was shot in, if you want to give a little background on that.
I do. It was shot at Helheim Haunted Attraction, and that's like maybe a mile from my house. It's like our local hub. It's the only haunted house around, and it's the only music venue around within over an hour. So for us, it's very important to keep it going. So we try to do everything that we can to help promote them.
Well, let's give Helheim some love. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And so when I said this was going to be a little bit different, we're talking horror movies. Mindy and I assigned a movie to each other to watch, and we're going to talk about that. I do want to get some background on you, Mindy, and we'll give a little bit on me as well. What was the first horror movie you ever saw in theaters? Or at all, actually?
Well, the first thing that I ever saw at all, my mom was actually watching one of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, and I was a bit of an insomniac as a child. And so I would sneak up when I thought everybody was asleep and watch TV or whatever, and I got up to sneak out of my room to go to the refrigerator, and my mom was up watching the movie. So I sat at the corner of my door with the door cracked and kind of watched most of it, and it scared the hell out of me, but I loved it.
So, I mean, that was kind of your breaking point into horror movies?
Absolutely. I think my mom was always really into horror movies and mostly vampire movies. She had this weird obsession with vampires. And I think that kind of carried over because horror movies have always been my thing. I like comedy and, romance and all that crap, but horror movies, man, that's where it's at for sure.
What's your favorite of all time? I know
That's
that's a really loaded question. It's tricky to answer, and I put you on the spot. But
well, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies are always going to have a special part of my heart, because that's what got me started. But I think probably my favorite horror movie, and it's really not even that scary now to me, but it scared me as a kid, is probably The Lost Boys. I really like that movie.
Lost Boys was kind of perfect. To me, that's okay. Jaws kind of did something for summer, but Lost Boys as well. That's like the perfect summer. You're at the beach, you turn that movie on and watch it. I don't know if it's the Santa Monica aspect or the you never know what dangers lurk at night. Because I know particularly the area it was shot in, like they had real problems with crime at night while they
Yeah.
were making the movie. So you kind of got to wonder if they weren't drawing from experience. I do love The Lost Boys. My background on horror movies it is a little less exciting. 1997, Brendan Fraser. My dad took me to see The Mummy in theaters, and that was kind of my segue. You know, a perfect little PG-13. My parents were divorced at the time. My mom was so mad. My dad took me to see it, and that kind of always stuck with me. That like rebellious attitude. And then my next most vivid memory is the remake of The Haunting.
Oh
I
yeah.
had the privilege of seeing that one in the theaters, and it kind of just got hooked from there. And if I were to give my favorite horror movie of all time, it's a toss-up. I'm a big fan of slashers. That tends to be where I go, where I lean. And it's interesting that you fall on the Nightmare on Elm Street side, because very much so, the Friday the 13th franchise has a very, very special place in my heart, just because of how absurd it all gets. Like at one point, Jason goes to Manhattan and he punches a dude's head clean off. Physically impossible. Physically impossible, but they weren't afraid to take those turns. And it would have to be that or Wes Craven's very first directorial credit, Last House on the Left, which I think
Oh
takes a
yeah.
much darker turn. It very much deals with kind of how nasty humans can be. And that's something we're about to explore. Mindy and I kind of challenge each other to watch these movies, and I gave her Cube, which is a Canadian film, and she gave me High Tension, which is a French film. Interesting, we had to go abroad for this, but we'll start with Cube. Just because there's a lot of conversation I want to have on High Tension, so I want to lend that more time. So we'll start with Cube. You've watched it. What were your thoughts?
Well, it didn't end at all how I thought it was going to, in the least. And
Actually, before we go further, we are going to probably spoil the endings. So it would do you a great justice to go see these movies. Cube is on YouTube. High Tension, the movie that Mindy assigned to me, is on Pluto TV. Watch them, pause, come back. All right. So we're back before we spoil anything.
Okay, so yeah, it didn't end at all how I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to be one of those things where like just nobody gets out, just everybody is screwed. Not at all what happened. Similar, but not exactly what happened. But I don't know, the whole time, like I liked it because, you're just on your edge of your seat the entire time trying to figure it out for yourself before they figure it out. And you never do,
No.
you never figure out the movie the entire time. And then you get to the end of it and you're just like, really? That's it? That's all? So yeah, screwed up my day a little.
That's one that's always sat with me. I think I saw it. So we were driving cross country. This would have been between my sophomore and junior year of high school. And I had a video iPod. That's just to give you context there. That used to be a thing. I just put a bunch of movies on there. Cube was one of them. And it was one that really stood out to me because, like you said, like you think but you really don't. And it kind of took some dark turns. I think Saw, the entire franchise, owes its ass to that movie. I really think there was a lot that was kind of picked and chosen. Of course, Saw would come out 2006, I want to say, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire concept behind the moving cube, you're fighting these rooms and trying to get through, and you have to figure out A, why you're in there, B, how the hell we're gonna get out. And then you just randomly wander into this autistic individual, and you kind of don't realize till the end that he's kind of the one with the keys to the castle.
He's the smartest one in the whole damn movie.
I also think they did a lot with gore. It was something to me. You can go too over the top, or you can go real low key. I feel like they found a middle of the road.
I think so too. I really liked the acid scene. That was really cool. Um, Especially when they go back and find the body the second time. That was pretty awesome. But yeah, the blood, everything was pretty dead on. It looked very realistic, you know, for that time.
Another thing about it that stands to me, and this is something that personally I find horrifying. As an individual, I'm incredibly claustrophobic. Don't like
I
tight
heard.
spaces. Find it really easy to avoid them, so it's not really a fear I regularly encounter. But there is something incredibly confining about the entire movie, and I think that really contributes to what makes it so terrifying.
I think that's probably what got me the most. It wasn't even the fear of them dying in each room. It was that there's a possibility you're not going to get out of this at all.
Yeah.
And it's an enclosed space. So you're just going to suffer to death in a tiny space. And it's pretty brutal.
A tiny space where like math also became very important. So like room 3, I would have been done by that point.
Yeah, I would just die because I'm terrible at math.
It's related to prime numbers and their factorization. It's a great headspace to get in. I recommend you watch the movie entirely sober, at least like 3 times before you want to try it again. Right now, they're actually working on a Japanese remake. They started shooting shortly before COVID hit in Japan.
Oh.
And I've not heard a lot of stories of, you know, there was a big run. We had The Grudge, we had The Ring. We were importing their movies and remaking them. So it's interesting that it's now going back the other direction.
I agree.
And yes, I'm lumping Canada into us because North America, what the hell?
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm going to give you a rating scale. We're not going to use stars. We're not going to use numbers because this is about horror.
Okay.
We're going to use hatchets.
Okay.
If you were to give this on a scale of 1 to 10 hatchets, how many hatchets would you award Cube?
I'm going to give it a 7. You know, there's a lot of things that could have been done a little different and probably better, but for their time, it was really good. I thought the storyline was great. I thought the acting was actually pretty good for its time. The gore was good, like you said, and the ending I could not figure out. So yeah, I would definitely give it a 7. And I'm one of those people that usually doesn't give a 10. So 9's usually like the highest you're going to get. So 7's not bad.
I tend to be, I like I said, I have a personal attachment to this movie. So I'm going to go ahead and just blow it here. I will give this a 10. I can see why it would get a 7. Incredibly reasonable. I think my attachment to it's very much so nostalgic. It's definitely not a perfect movie. So if you're going in looking for a perfect horror movie, Cube is not it. I give it a 10. The crazy part to me is the budget was $350,000.
Wow.
They made $9 million.
Wow.
$9 million. So,
Good job.
And now it's been deemed a cult classic, which is something else we'll dig into. I'm really excited to talk about your movie, though. I thought I was going far with Cube.
Yeah.
And you handed me High Tension. So I'm really pleased. I think this is perfect. And I want you to give me your background on High Tension first.
Okay, so when I stumbled upon this movie, it was around the time that video stores were closing down. And I had gone to one of the local video stores in town and had just picked up a bunch of movies because they were selling them dirt cheap. I mean, like $1 a movie. Some of them were like a quarter. And I found High Tension, I think, for like $3. And it just looked epic. You know, it looked like a really cool slasher film. I was like, okay, this is cool. And then I started to watch it and it absolutely blew my mind. And I immediately after watching it had to go back and watch it again just to catch everything for the second time because there's just so much going on. And then when you get to the end, you're just like, no way did that happen. And so I had to go back just to find the realism in it.
Okay. So High Tension, it came out back in 2003. If you want to stream it for free, Pluto TV. You actually kind of had the privilege as I was watching leading up to this, of getting some of my real time reactions. And yeah, there's a lot going on here. First of all, I want to start before we go any further. The title, High Tension,
Mm,
incredibly accurate,
yes.
both on a sexual and a emotional level. Because there's a lot going on that you don't realize. Again, we are spoiling the ending, so just kind of deal with it. When it started, I was kind of like very confused. Okay, they're going on a road trip. Oh, wait, this feels like Jeepers Creepers. And then I see the dude in the van, which looks like exactly the same van from Jeepers Creepers,
Yes.
by the way. And then they kind of cut to the guy in the van, and there's something sexual going on, and then he dumps a head. So, first of all, I don't know if they intended this for American audiences. I don't know what the euphemisms are in France, but dude was getting head for real.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, I hope that's a joke that translates, or I've just stumbled on to some great comedy bit that nobody thought about.
I thought it was hilarious the first time because that's exactly what I thought when I watched it the first time. But I was also so young at the time of watching it that I was like, I felt guilty about thinking it was funny, you know? So I think that's also a reason why I like the movie so much.
I'm going to go with what I know about French culture. I think that was an intentional joke, but there's not a lot of outward comedy in this, or Cube. I think they're both very dark films. The other thing that really stood out to me about High Tension is the way everything kind of builds, and then it all goes real fast.
Yeah.
Everything gets real rough, and then for like that last hour, which is intriguing at a movie that has like an hour and a half runtime, that last hour is nothing but your heart kind of pounding.
Yeah.
I do feel we'd mentioned earlier, Last House on the Left always standing out to me is one of the
Stomach turning for me, I think.
this is like Last House on the Left, but in reverse.
Yeah.
And with a crazy ass twist at the end.
Yeah.
So did you see that coming? Because they kind of like bookend it. At the beginning, you've got Marie kind of sitting in that mental hospital, so you think it's going to be her entire story. And then you don't really realize until that last like 3 minutes that it's actually what's happening to Alex.
Yes. No, I had no idea the entire damn time that I was watching this. The whole time I thought it was just cut and dry. It's this guy, she went crazy because she saw all of this happening, the whole 9 yards. And then you get to the end. And then things start kind of making sense as to why things were happening. Because throughout the movie, I was super confused at certain parts. Like, how did that even work out that way? And then it all makes sense. So no, I had no idea whatsoever. Like, I felt really scared for her the entire time. And then she ends up being the crazy person. So
There was one moment to me that particularly stood out. It's that gas station scene where he's filling up his Jeepers Creepers van, and you go to his keychain, you go to his back, and then you go to the gas station logo, and it's like, oh, he works for this company. She picked a really bad spot to walk into. I was kind of thinking something along the lines of Vacancy.
yeah.
And then she walks into the gas station and it all gets real hazy. And I think that's where it kind of, if it were to fall apart anywhere, that's where it would fall apart. Because if you're a gas station clerk and you see this coworker, hey, there's this girl back there, and like, we should help her. But that didn't happen. That didn't take place.
No.
So now,
Not
like,
at all.
I kind of want the full security footage, which they do show later and towards the end of the movie. I kind of want the full security footage to see what the hell happened in that interaction, because she's ducking and dodging around aisles.
Yeah, that was one of the pivotal moments for me as well. That was one of the parts that didn't really make sense to me either, because there was just so many parts in the gas station where you're like, well, a normal person wouldn't act like that, and then it all makes sense. but that's most of the movie. Like
Yeah.
the
They
whole
really
time.
they really tie it together in the end. And to be honest, I didn't realize how many problems I had with that particular gas station sequence until the very end. They were kind of building, in my opinion, which is a huge trope in slasher films. They were building towards that final girl format.
Yep.
They were kind of leading you to believe that Marie was going to be the one to survive it all.
Yeah.
And in the end, that's not at all what we get.
No, not at all. And like, I think the most messed up scene for me is like when they're in the house and he's coming up the stairs and she has to hide. Like, that just screwed me up horribly. Like, for the rest of my life up until this point, you're always thinking, well, if somebody comes in the house, where are you going to hide?
What am I going to do?
Yeah, like what's the exit strategy? And then I didn't understand all of that till the end of the movie. Like, how did he not find her? Okay, well, that's how.
This is another one. I'm trying to think of a movie I've seen like this. I'm drawing blanks, but the other thing we talked about with Cube was the gore.
Hmm.
I mean, there are scenes. There's only one sequence in it where I was like, okay, that's just completely unrealistic, and it's where the dude gets decapitated by the dresser. Or
That was my favorite part to the whole movie because
like
it was so realistic.
the sequence was genius.
Yeah.
Because he gets stomped in between the railings. His head's trapped. He's trapped. He's already been stabbed in the face. But that dresser, the amount of force it would take. So looking back, given that we find out at the very end that our killer is a petite woman, how is she going to push a dresser with that force?
Rage, I guess. I know that when people have like split personalities and whatnot, like some of them are stronger than the other. So I think it's just that crazy psychotic super strength.
So
Still
you,
very realistic.
so you think she was legitimately dealing with like a split personality scenario?
I kind of do. Like, I've gone over different scenarios in my head. And at first, I'm like, okay, well, she's just crazy. But the whole time, she absolutely believes, even at the very end, that she's a victim. So I think that maybe
Yeah.
it's one of the personalities.
I mean, you're catching me fresh off watching, so I haven't fully analyzed. That makes a lot of sense, actually. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that was dealt with in like M. Night Shyamalan's Split. Is that there are personalities that are just stronger than the others.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's very much so the case. The other thing, though, outside of that, where I kind of pointed out, the gore was very believable. Like you've got that scene where the mom's kind of laying and she's just had her throat slashed. It didn't like do this ridiculous arterial spray that you see in a lot of movies, which actually isn't all that realistic from what I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, especially for the time it came out, I think that they did a really great job with how things would actually look. So I was pleased with that.
The other one that stood out to me, there are two more things I've got on this movie, and then we'll go ahead and rate it. The killer, uh, looked exactly like Quint from Jaws. Exactly like Quint from Jaws. I mean, granted, he would have had to put on 50 pounds and not have a beard, but the way he was dressed, the hat, the hair. So very much so, I think at a development phase, they watched Jaws and subconsciously took that on. But the other thing that you find in European films and in Asian films that you don't find here in America that they did is the dog and the young child both die.
Yeah.
That was tough for me. However, I do appreciate that they didn't actually show it happen either time.
Same here. Yeah, that was one of those moments the first time I watched it that I had to pause and kind of take a deep breath. I can watch people dying all day long, but when it comes to like kids and animals, that's what really gets me for some reason, and so that was one of those moments the first time I watched it. I was just like, wow, this might be too much for me. After watching everything else, I was fine. But that moment I was like, okay, I need a break.
All right. Before we rate this, I do have one more thing. I went ahead because we were talking about remakes and kind of how those things go. I went ahead and just did the due diligence and recast it for an American audience. And I want to see if you agree.
Okay.
So for Marie, I kept getting Anne Heche in Psycho, but also a little bit I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Me too. Definitely Anne Heche. Yeah. They have the same type of kind of rugged personality with still that very feminist vibe. So yeah, I agree with that. That's perfect.
This is one that a lot of people may not get. I think you may. For Alex, Heather Matarazzo. So
Yes.
she's more known for like the Princess Diaries, but she was also, keep in mind, in Scream 3 and Hostel 2. And I think in both movies, she wasn't given enough time to shine.
I agree.
I think she would make a great Alex. And then for the killer, I went ahead with Robert Shaw, Quint from Jaws, because it was too damn obvious.
That's perfect, actually. Yeah,
All right.
I agree with those.
So we got 10 hatchets to give. What do you give High Tension?
For me, it's another one of those nostalgia things. It was one of those movies that absolutely blew my mind and has stuck with me forever. As I said, it's hard for me to give 10s, but I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 10 because it's something that I don't think any movie has topped for me in certain aspects.
I really want to give this a 10. I really do. I give it a 9 because the dog and the kid die.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that's a terrible way to take away points, but I do because I don't know. And 9 out of 10, that's still 90%. You're still in that A category. High Tension, highly recommend it. It will leave your head spinning. Cube, one of my favorites all the time. Oh, the other thing to mention, High Tension, their budget was 2.5 and they made 6.8 million. And they definitely earned that R rating. Of course, I have been chatting with Mindy of Dying Oath. And you want to point him to your socials?
Well, you can go to dyingoathband.com, which is where you can find our show schedule, everything in between. We have a link tree, which has all of our links. Of course, we have a YouTube, Instagram. If you can, follow us on Spotify to get all the new music. We're everywhere, man. Just if there's social media, we're there.
Give Dying Oath some love. Mindy, I would like to have this conversation again. We'll have to talk about some more movies. But in the meantime, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.